All right, y'all. There's a lot of stuff out about P Diddy right now that he's locked up. And as somebody who, if you're new here, just letting you know who's done 10 years in prison, I kind of want to react to this video from Law and Crime Network. P Diddy is allegedly forcing inmates to do his dirty work in jail. So I just want to see what that sounds like. What are the details of that, and just kind of give you my opinion based off my experience. Let's go through this.
P Diddy has seemingly made some friends on the inside, and apparently they're doing his dirty work for him. New reports suggest that fellow Brooklyn inmates have been keeping Diddy's jail cell clean and pristine, even making the bed for him.
No, oh my gosh, that's awful. How could they? I mean, that's only about the most common thing you ever heard in jail. Anybody who's got a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of Diddy's money, there's guys in there who get no money. They don't have loved ones sending them money. They don't really have a hustle. They don't really know, the only thing they can do, I mean, it's a very common hustle. It's probably one of the lower tier ones. You don't get that much money from it, but you'll get enough to make it day to day. And if you got no other options, it's a good thing. Yeah. A guy who's got a lot of money or enough money, he'll pay you a couple items, honey buns, soup, snacks, whatever. You might even go on a contract where he's giving you 20, 30 bucks a week to go in there every morning at a certain time, sweep his cell, mop his cell, make his bed, and just do a quick cell cleaning. It's a pretty common thing. So it doesn't surprise me at all that a guy with that much money has quickly picked up on, hiring somebody for that job.
And that's not all. There are also reports that other inmates are making Diddy snacks and allowing him to use their phone accounts to make his calls.
No. Snacks? Diddy snacks? No. He wouldn't do that. That's another hustle. There are people in there, you wouldn't believe the things inmates come up with. If you check my shorts on my page, most of my shorts, probably 90% of my shorts, are raw footage of inmates doing all types of creative, I guess, things in prison. And that, I mean, coming up with ways to cook, grill, heat, bake, whatever, food and snacks that you wouldn't normally get at, your run-of-the-mill jail or prison cafeteria. That's a hot commodity. That's something in demand of people who can afford, excuse me, to buy those things. If there's somebody in there who has, I could go on for however long about how they get these hot water pots and break off the little burner at the bottom and essentially make like a stove, burner, and they use that and tin cans that they steal from the kitchen and just cook all this stuff, and just, that's a whole thing. It's not just Diddy doing that. There's plenty, any inmate with any decent amount of money. Well, you're talking in comparison to most inmates who don't really have that much money. So it doesn't take that much money to be an inmate who has a lot of money. But of course, this guy, I can't imagine. So, I mean, yeah, they're making him snacks. Oh, yeah, no crap. That's another common jail hustle.
To get a better look at Diddy's life behind bars,
and as far as using other inmates' accounts to make his personal phone calls, well, yeah. He knows. See, he's probably smart enough to know that there are people who are going to be pulling and FOIA requesting these phone call records. And so he's going to make it hard, and he's going to use other inmates. How are we ever going to know what inmate's PIN number he's using to make his own calls? And that's a very common thing. Like, even if Diddy just trying to avoid being FOIA requested, which is Freedom of Information Act, and that's basically where the public can pull your jail phone calls. Anybody can do it if you want to pay the little fee to get it. And, most people will do that, use their buddy's account. When they get in trouble, they got caught with something they're not supposed to have, they got in a fight, whatever, and you kind of, get a little spanking by the jail and say, oh, you're not allowed to use your phone account for 30 days. So they're like, okay, all right, that's a fair punishment. And then they go right next door to the guy in the cell next door and like, hey, man, let me use your phone. Mine's suspended for 30 days. Nothing out of the ordinary at all.
We're hearing from former Metropolitan Detention Center Deputy Warden Dr. D. Wayne Hendricks, who says Diddy's star treatment isn't much of a surprise. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. It's hard to believe 55-year-old Sean P. Diddy Combs has been behind bars for more than 2 months now, but here we are. The disgraced music icon has been held at the infamous Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn since September 16th, much to his counsel's dismay. You may recall Diddy's team has tried relentlessly to get him either transferred from MDC or released on bond, but to no avail. The defense has suggested a $50,000 bond, round-the-clock security, a GPS monitor, and even limited contact with women. Even still, he's consistently been denied release. So at least for now, MDC is his home. By now, you know.
With women, just women in general? If that has to be one of your proposals for, hey, we'll do this, we'll agree to this if you just let him go. If that has to be included, hey, I tell you what, you know, we'll pay you 50 grand. We'll have an ankle monitor, round the clock supervision. I tell you what, we'll delete all the women's phone numbers out of his phone, and we'll block any woman that he's following on Instagram so he can't DM them. I tell you that. How about that? If he goes to Walmart, we'll make sure he's with 600 feet away from any woman in there. Like, if that has to be a condition of your bond, probably not getting out. I mean, come on.
You know that Diddy's been indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors allege he's the kingpin in a decades-old sex trafficking scheme in which he drugged victims, sexually assaulted them, and recorded it all. That's where we get this notorious phrase, freak-offs, which prosecutors described as elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. Diddy originally used these recordings as blackmail to keep survivors quiet, but now they're being used against him as evidence that he's committed these federal offenses. After his arrest in New York, Diddy was booked at MDC. Back then, we took a deep dive into MDC's conditions, but they're really worth revisiting. Following Diddy's arrest, his attorney Mark Agnifilo immediately sounded the alarm on MDC, arguing there are some major issues with the jail, citing violence, poor conditions, overcrowding, and even staffing issues.
Are you kidding me? Really? Violence in the jail? Oh, gosh. Crap. Wow. Well, yeah, get him out of there quick.
He also cited some startling statistics. 2 inmates have been killed at MDC.
It ain't a library, ma'am.
Since June, and at least 4 inmates have died by suicide over the past 3 years. On top of that, 6 staff members have been charged with crimes over the past 5 years. Even with all these questionable stats, it's still
how many? That's not many for that many years as far as staff getting in trouble.
Common for defendants to be housed at MDC after their arrest, as they're awaiting trial in either Manhattan or Brooklyn. And the jail is no stranger to high-profile inmates either. MDC famously housed R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sam Bankman-Fried, who's actually there right now. We've mentioned Sam Bankman-Fried to you in the past. He's the fraudster convicted of money laundering following the collapse of his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried became relevant to Law and Crime's audience when Diddy was arrested because both men were housed in the same part of MDC, a specific unit for inmates that required special protection. That's people like Diddy or Sam Bankman-Fried who are high-profile inmates, or even for other inmates who need protection during ongoing investigations. For some time, that's where Diddy was, the SHU, or the secure housing unit. But in recent days, he's been moved to general population, and that's where these new reports come from. Diddy is
That's honestly, someone of, I mean, let's be real, someone like Diddy, of his magnitude of just celebrity and high profile, you heard it say it themselves, to only have been locked up for 2 months and he's already been moved from we call it special housing unit, but secure housing unit, whichever, same thing, to general population is actually, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. And I could only assume that he's been pushing for that and he wants that. And if you've been following my channel a while, and you know, I've always preached that most inmates do not, you know, you think even the high profile ones, you think they want to be isolated and separated. That is mental hell after not too long. You know, there really are so many advantages to just being put in general population, especially if you're a guy who, I mean, this guy can buy his peace and maybe not even, I wouldn't even say protection, because I mean, this guy, I'll tell you now, by the time it's all said and done, assuming he's in prison and gets a long time, he's the same thing he's done out here. It's the same thing he's going to do in there, and he's going to rise to the top, and he's going to take over wherever he goes. I mean, there's no doubt about it in my mind.
He's allegedly befriended some of his fellow inmates who have apparently started helping him out with tasks like making his bed or cleaning his cell. Prosecutors allege Diddy is also using the phone accounts belonging to some of these other inmates. They say Diddy knows his phone line is being monitored, so by using the other phone lines, he hopes to keep his conversations private. According to court docs, Diddy is partaking in unauthorized three-way calls as a way to send hundreds of texts. And
yeah, that's another common thing. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that you lost your phone privileges. If I just simply don't have money to make a phone call, and I see, you know, Slim J, you know, old One Eye McGee over there, you know, I wasn't hungry this morning. I let him have my biscuit at breakfast. He kind of owes me one. Hey, you're over there on the phone with your baby mama. Hey, can you tell her, text this number real quick for me and tell him I said, hey, sweetheart, I love you, and I'm trying to come home real soon. Yeah, just tell her I said that. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's nothing. That is everyday run-of-the-mill stuff. So it's nothing that I'm just like, whoa, Diddy's doing that? Like, I would expect nothing less, honestly. I'd expect a lot more than what I've heard so far.
some of these messages are apparently going to people on Diddy's no contact list.
I bet.
The feds say Diddy has used the accounts of at least 8 other inmates, but they say he's doing more than that. They allege Diddy is also trying to corruptly influence witness testimony and taint the jury pool from behind bars. Prosecutors wrote, quote, "While attempting to invade law enforcement monitoring, the defendant has, among other things, orchestrated social media campaigns that are, in his own words, aimed at tainting the jury pool, made efforts to publicly leak materials he views as helpful to the case, and contacted witnesses through third parties." All right.
Well, I mean, that's what he does. Apparently, I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. That's what he does. He networks. He gets stuff on people. He whether it's dirt or whether it's dangling something in front of you, you want money or whatever. I mean, to get influence and control how things go. I mean, that's what he's done for decades now, and that's not going to change now that he's in jail. And if anything, it's going to ramp up. It's going to intensify because now he's really got something on the line, which concerns him.
Okay, so let's talk Diddy and the latest allegations. With me is former Metropolitan Detention Center warden, Dr. D. Wayne Hendricks. Thank you for coming on again with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so talking about Diddy, last time I talked to you, he was in a different part of MDC, a secure location for potentially high-profile inmates. Now, could it be that P Diddy is in Gen Pop or general population?
Yes, I'm assuming that after doing a threat assessment on him after being there for several weeks, it was determined that he could be housed in a general population unit. And it's been my experience when I was there, several years ago. We have a east and a west building, and typically we had, since it's a detention center, you have all types of individuals there. High security, low security, minimum. And then you have folks like former law enforcement officers, and then folks that were may have been compromised. And you also have sex offenders that are detainees. So what we would do.
Yeah. So just so you know, S offenders are protected. There you get confirmation from the warden himself, and that's how it goes. And that's just side note here. everyone thinks, oh, people who do crimes like that, they're going to get it in prison. They often don't, because as you just heard, they are grouped in with other people who need protection and need to be separated from for being at risk of being harmed. Things rarely happen to people who have those charges.
Sometimes we would house some of our high profile individuals with former law enforcement who are facing charges for whatever criminal behavior that they were being alleged to have committed, as well as sex offenders, because typically when you put those two types of populations together, there's typically less jailhouse politics involved, and there's minimal risk to being harmed or dangered. So I'm assuming, from what I understand, he's in the West Building, which is it's an open bay unit. So they're not cells. They're like a dormitory style units, and they're open. And again, typically there's your low level offenders, typically possible sex offenders, alleged sex offenders, as well as former law enforcement who are facing charges. So I'm sure that's probably where he's being housed right now.
We're also getting some interesting reports since he's been moved to this area. One of the reports or tips we got is that other inmates are actually making Diddy's bed for him.
And don't tell me they're leaving a piece of chocolate on the pillow. Or peppermint. Why is that so interesting?
What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that's not.
Even he, look at him. I guarantee he's about to be like, yeah, that's not that surprising. I mean, he knows what. Listen, more than an inmate, I mean, just as much as an inmate knows what's going on, wardens know what's going on in their prison. I mean, I guarantee he's about to say that's not a big surprise.
Necessarily uncommon, especially for someone of his celebrity status, especially if he's being housed with individuals that aren't a threat to him, or he's not a threat to them. So I'm assuming they probably are maybe doing some favors for him, maybe even cooking food in the microwave. I mean, they don't have microwaves, probably whipping up some type of meals from the commissary dishes. Now, they are to have hot water at a certain temperature where they can cook certain processed foods that they buy in commissary, and they're also charged with having ice machines. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're probably not cooking for him, as well as doing other favors, maybe even washing his clothes. So that's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Why would some of these other inmates basically serve Diddy, cleaning up after him, making...
Ma'am, why do you think? Oh boy, I don't know. I guess they just really love his rap music. He's got money.
Him this food, all of that. Do you think it's just because of his clout?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I think maybe for some, some folks are just, you have a different makeup of individuals that are behind bars. And some of them may have idolized his music throughout the years. And some may think at some point maybe he'll do them a favor or a solid, or make some contacts for them, at some point, during their stay at the detention center. So I'm not surprised by that, because I've also.
So you definitely, sir, you do not want to admit how common it is for like money, like actual money. I'm not talking about snacks. I'm talking about Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, Western Unions, or just straight cash drops get orchestrated between these inmates and their whoever friends and loved ones outside, who then they kind of handle all their finances for them. Like everybody has a little horde of someone. You got your brother, your sister, your mother, your baby mama, your baby daddy, I don't know, out there who's holding your money and putting your money on and doing this. And you can use my Cash App. If some other inmate's grandma wants to send $20 to my Cash App for you, and I'll send it to you and put it on your account so you can buy noodles. And just, sir, are you really going to act like it's because they enjoy his music? Yeah, let me make your bed. That one record you had, I'm coming home, tell the way. You know what, sir? Step aside. Let me tuck your sheets in, and let me sweep this debris out of your cell. Shut up, dude.
Also seen other high-profile inmates, not necessarily someone as famous as Mr. Combs, but some people with what we call street credibility, who whose name is pretty popular in the streets and different communities across the country. And folks would.
Let me tell you something. No grown man in a hyper masculine prison or jail environment is going to do household chores for another man because of street clout or Hollywood clout. He's getting paid. You're talking money. That's it. Oh my gosh, you have 1 million followers. Allow me to scrub your toilet, sir. Dude, no.
Want to just be around that type of energy. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
It's not just making the bed and making him meals or snacks, though. Prosecutors actually say that P. Diddy has paid off some of these other inmates so that he can use their phone accounts. Because obviously, if he's using his own account, it could be monitored, it would be recorded likely. So if he's using other people's accounts, maybe the prosecutors wouldn't be able to hear what he was saying. What do you make of that? Do you think that's even possible?
Yes. And again, that's not an uncommon practice in jails and prisons across the country. Basically, it's a form of using the phones to make a three-way call. So like in your words, so that these calls potentially might not be monitored but all calls are recorded. However, the PAC number is what we call it in the federal system. Each inmate is assigned to a PAC number for their particular account. So that, and it's voice recognition. So yeah, if someone goes to use their.
That is true. Even in South Carolina, where I did my prison time, we were made aware like there is voice recognition. And if they really want to, they can find any time Diddy's used the phone, no matter whose account he's used to make the call.
PAC number, they would have to make the call because there is voice recognized. And then you would ask the individual, you use the phone to call someone on your phone, on your contact list. And then you would say, hey, can you make a three-way call to this particular number? And then when that individual comes on the phone, then Mr. Combs or another individual who's trying to make the three-way call would get on the line and then start having their conversation. But I just don't really understand why Mr. Combs is using this strategy, because these calls are going to be monitored. These calls are going to be looked at. So I really don't understand.
And honestly, I mean, he was probably told that strategy by some other inmate. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Because I'm sure he doesn't know about, all the tricks and tips of jail and prison. And so some other inmate probably told him that with good intentions of helping Diddy. But the thing is, Diddy is not other inmates. Most inmates, your Joe Jackson, your Johnny Brown, your Bobby Miller Jr. the fourth. They don't, these are just your average, everyday criminals who get criminal cases, and it is what it is. And this isn't going to be plastered all over the news, and this isn't going to be the talk of the entire country. So they're not going to pay extra special attention to you. Your armed robbery is no more substantial than this guy's attempted murder, or than this guy's drug trafficking, or this guy's shoplifting. I mean, it's not, it is what it is. But when you got Diddy, it doesn't work anymore. They're gonna be on you times 50.
I understand why he's doing it, for whatever purpose he's trying to evade these calls be recorded. But at the same time, he has to be self-aware enough to realize that the jail staff and as well as the prosecution team is going to want to know who's making calls and that kind of thing. And then I can also explain in terms of them being paid. We have this, and I'm not going to give the name of the software, but there's software that the agency utilizes to see what we call the degrees of separation. So you can see which person is sending different individuals in these lockups money, and you can see who's all contact.
Yeah, that's if they send it to the jail account. But the thing people don't realize is this is 2024 in these jails and prisons. Like I just kind of briefly touched on, people hardly ever even use the jail accounts other than just getting money put on there to use the phone or to get honey buns, like actually honey buns and Snickers and just your little gas station snacks. Like there's actual contraband, cigarettes, drugs, all type of stuff that doesn't get bought and sold through these jail accounts that they're able to track like he's talking about. I mean, I'm talking about people, they have a support. Almost every person in jail or prison has a support system, whether it's one lone person or it's like 5, 6, or 20 people. They have someone out there who has a cash app or these payment apps, and they're directing them, hey, send this here, do this here, do this there. And they're getting other inmates to direct to their support system to send this money to their support system, who then helps them. And okay, so they sent that to me. And now what do I want to do with this money? I want to buy this. And so I'm going to get my support system to send it to this guy's support system who has what I want. And it'll never even show up on this thing this guy's talking about. So they're not exactly as on the case as he's saying.
So even if some of his associates or family is sending money to these,
but I would expect a former warden to portray it as if, hey, nothing's getting by us. We know everything that's going on and we're getting them left and right. You're not. You're actually not. But, whatever.
Individuals that are helping him use these phone calls, all the stuff is easily traced back. So obviously he's not understanding the rules and regulations and of the processes that the agency uses to monitor this type of behavior.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think he's flying under the radar if that's his goal, because obviously we're talking about it right now. And in addition to paying these people to use their phone calls, there's actually allegations that he's paid other people to post on Instagram in support of him. Obviously, this could be people outside in the other world. He suggested, you should post, whatever it may be. But what about on the inside? These people don't have access to Instagram, or do they?
Of course they do. They have contraband cell phones. It's the most common thing in the world for jails and prisons. Inmates, a lot of them, as long as you can afford it. Now, don't get me wrong. You're talking a very cheap, like you go to Dollar General and get a $30 prepaid phone, and that is going to cost you probably anywhere from $1 to $2 to $3. I've even seen $5,000 for the price tag for that. It really just depends on how plentiful they are. It's the economy. If there's a lot of them floating around, will probably be $1,000 to $2,000. If there's like, oh man, there are hardly any phones and everybody wants one, we're gonna, the price is gonna get jacked up to like $5,000 or $6,000. You never know. It just depends. But most common thing in the world for inmates to have cell phones. If you don't believe me, just check anywhere on TikTok. You see inmates going live from prison every day.
No, and I think they had that jail sweep with different federal agencies that came to do to check for hard contraband, whether it's weapons, cell phones, or other contraband that the individuals in there shouldn't have. Now, does inmates do have cell phones sometimes? Yes, they do. And unfortunately, sometimes
or all the time,
folks do have access. And then sometimes they have family on the outside post or friends or associates post on their behalf. So it's not uncommon. Unfortunately, I've seen even at jails and prisons I've operated, inmates were running YouTube channels during COVID-19 with cameras and different things of that nature.
I was locked up during COVID. I was going viral a lot. It's mainly on Facebook.
So they're very resourceful individuals. And, and unfortunately, sometimes those things does happen.
To your point, they are very resourceful. So we do know maybe they're not allowed to have these phones or access, but sometimes they do have them. I'm wondering if this then would amp up the amount of searches that the prison staff would make throughout. I mean, P Diddy is a pretty big name. Obviously, we know.
I don't understand what more searches. You're either going to find it or you're not. I mean, these inmates, I could sit here for an hour and talk about the ingenuity of the hiding spots that inmates come up with for these cell phones. And if you're going to search and find their phone, they'll go buy another one. I mean, there's cell phones coming in every week. That doesn't really matter or change anything. More searches. I mean,
know that he's talking to the other inmates around him. Would then MDC staff be keeping an eye on his specific cell, maybe more than others?
Yes, I'd say. I mean, whether him having a cell phone or getting caught with one or anything like that or not, just the fact that this is an ongoing case and he's P Diddy and it is so important and so huge and so under the microscope, absolutely they're going to be focusing on him 10 times more than that, more than any other inmate.
No, I think each staff member that works each unit on a shift, there's 3 shifts in every day, and they're charged with doing cell searches, or in his case, area searches or bed searches, because he'd either be on the top or bottom bunk, and his belongings would more than likely be under the bottom bunk along with his bunkmate. So obviously,
what about the belongings of his that he's not allowed to have, that he keeps with other people who need money, and he's paid them to hold his stuff for him so that he can't be caught and punished with it. And if anyone gets caught, it'll be the person he paid to hold it. And so they take the fall. What about that? Are you going to talk about that or not?
There's going to be more eyes on his area. And again, there are a specific number of searches that they should be doing on a daily basis. And I'm sure his area is probably going to be more monitored. And more than likely, a lot of times what inmates would do, they would try to put some of their belongings or things that they don't want to be seen in another inmate's.
You know what? I salute to this guy. I respect him for keeping it real, because I mean that's how a guy like this, P Diddy, that's how a guy like this is going to operate back there. He's not going to touch nothing. Anything he's not supposed to have will rarely even touch his fingertips. That's how he's going to operate, because he's got the money to do it. It's not about clout or fame. He's got millions. They know that. I mean, that's all it is.
Area, thinking that the staff wouldn't necessarily be looking at their area. So, but I would assume that they're probably shaking down that area quite often.
Yeah.
Now, we know that where he's at, obviously there's a lot of staff at MDC who are keeping eyes on Diddy and all the other inmates too, but he's the one we're talking about today. Tell me about this, because I'm not super familiar. Obviously, prosecutors are going to want to know if he's up to anything while he's behind bars. Would they then be in contact with any of the employees at MDC? Hey, we got a tip Diddy's doing this, or he might be doing that. What's that relationship like?
Well, I can tell you, while Miss Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, was at MDC Brooklyn, she was housed in the special housing unit pretty much the entire time that she was there. And they would, the agency had different folks from different parts of the country come out and spend, a couple of weeks at a time to be in the area where she was being housed. And I, from what I understand, they were having meetings with the executive team on a daily basis, giving updates on with her or different things of that nature. So I would assume that the U.S. Marshals, along with the prosecution team from the Southern District of New York, is probably in frequent contact with the institution in regards to any information that they would need to know about as it relates to this particular case.
And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you specifically is because of your past for several years working as deputy warden at MDC. So you're really familiar with the layout and the procedures, all of that. Are you still in contact with some people back there, hearing any information about what's going on since Diddy has been taken into jail?
Not necessarily anyone specific in the building, but just knowing how the agency operates, following the reports as you and your team does. And then understanding what, while I was still working in the agency, how they treated Miss Maxwell while she was in the, worked there in the facility, because I did have a couple of my staff travel out there, 2 to 3 times during the year in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. So yeah, I'm using my familiar surroundings and understanding how the agency operates to gather information and to be able to have these type of conversations, so the listening public will kind of have a clearer understanding.
Listen, he knows what's going on. I have full confidence. I mean, as someone who, I'm coming as a former inmate, a former convict, and this guy, you would say, is actually on the opposite team. He's the warden. He's the king of the opposite team. I will tell you right now, this guy knows what he's talking about. He knows how these jails and prisons operate. He knows all the little tricks and stuff that inmates do. And he, I would say for the most part, you know, this video, I think we've got like 2 minutes left on this video. He, for the most part, has pretty much told it like it is. So I can't say too much bad about his input here. I mean, that's pretty much spot on, you know.
What may or may not be occurring.
He knows what he's talking about
in the facility.
We also know that P Diddy's team has been adamant they want him released from jail. This hasn't happened as of yet, so he's still behind bars at MDC. If that continues and he's never allowed bail or bond, he's stuck there at MDC until he has his trial. What do you expect? Do you think he'll remain in this Gen Pop area, or he could go back to the more secure facility? What do you think that would look like?
Well, I can tell you the agency is really taking a look at the use of the special housing unit and not trying to confine individuals in what the public will call solitary confinement over extended periods of time unnecessarily, because they do have negative effect on individuals' mental and physical health long term. However, that is going to be determined by Mr. Combs. Like I would always tell new inmates when they would come into the facility, if you act like a human being, you will be treated as such. And if you disrupt the peace, we have process and procedures to get you back into compliance, and then we'll go back to what we call normal operations. So I think what we're seeing from him right now is probably going to have more ramifications later, especially if he is convicted of these charges, because, really as a pretrial detainee, if he is somehow found guilty, being able to mitigate any long sentences based on his behavior in the programming that's available there to him. And it will be in his best interest to start getting focused on programming, connecting with his family and those who really care about him at the end of the day, because these types of things, using inmates' PAC numbers and other things like that, making these type of violations, they're not going to bode well in the long run for him.
Well, Diddy's been at MDC for...
True, I agree. But those things are only going to come up because it's P. Diddy. Because if they brought those type of violations up with every single inmate at sentencing or trial or whatever who committed them, they'd be brought up with every single inmate has done these type of violations. I mean, as far as like just using the other person's PIN number or getting my family to put money on your canteen because I'm not allowed to use mine right now. And so you can order me $20 worth of stuff. And since I used your thing, then I put $30 on there. You get me $20 worth of stuff and you can order yourself $10 worth of stuff because you weren't going to get any money anyways, because you don't have anybody to send you money. Stuff like that, it would be brought up with everybody, but because it's P. Diddy, it probably will be brought up, and it probably will, like he said, affect, that portion of this whole legal process.
For over 2 months at this point, and we're still learning new details about what's happening behind bars. Thank you, Dwayne, for coming on with us and giving us a look behind the curtain.
Thank you.
P. Diddy maintains his innocence. He's pleaded not guilty to sex crimes charges and is due back in court on Friday. Right now, his federal trial is expected for May of next year. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
May of next year, huh? I'll be there. All right. Hope y'all enjoyed that. I'm probably going to keep covering this Diddy case as long as he doesn't send his goonies after me. My cats are vicious, so enter my property at your own risk, buddy. But hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you like it, and if you want to see me cover some more. I mean, there's endless Diddy updates going on over here on Law and Crime and just elsewhere. So if you want to see me keep reacting to it, let me know. Other than that, I'm about to get started on the next video. See you next time.